And with all of that, we're going to be talking about everything that Martin has been working on super hard to get some interesting demos around the support for SKIA everywhere, and see how fast it runs, and how we've added WinRT and all the super cool APIs. And Martin has all the information for you to be all aware of what we're able to offer. So Martin, go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. Hope you can hear me well. Hope you're enjoying the show so far. Let's dive into the nitty-gritty, the under the hood of Uno Platform. This is the core framework, and I will be talking about how we made Uno Platform as a framework better with 6.0. So one of the main aspects that we focused on with 6.0 was performance. And we made performance better in two significant ways. First one is that we focus on all the hot paths of our application to make sure everything is optimized. And even if you just take your existing application and just update the Uno SDK to 6.0, you will immediately see a significant performance boost. So there is a big performance gain just by updating to a new version. But there is a second way where we made performance significantly better, and that is adding the SKIA Sharp rendering as an option for Android, iOS, and WebAssembly. So previously, we were using the native rendering capabilities of each platform, so that we used the native views to render the UI. But now you have the option to use SKIA Sharp instead, so that we render all the content of your application on a SKIA Sharp canvas. And you can see here, here I have opened two Uno Platform Gallery applications side by side, and you cannot really tell the difference. They both look the same. But on the left side, I have the native rendering, and on the right side, I have the SKIA Sharp-based rendering. And you can really see the performance difference. When I, for example, here click on Data Grid, you can see that freeze, that it takes a bit to load, and it really is disruptive for the user. But if you compare it to the SKIA Sharp rendering, if I click, it's immediately there. It's like instantly showing up. And that's the difference that you can get if you are using SKIA Sharp rendering. And I can explain why that happens. Because if I go here to the element tree, you can see in the case of DOM rendering, we were actually generating all that HTML and CSS and everything for you. So there is a very large nesting of HTML elements showing up here. So you don't write HTML, of course, we generate it for you. But that means that we generate HTML that goes into the browser. Then it's parsed by the browser. It has to be parsed and rendered. All those styles and everything has to be applied. That means a lot of wasted time and a lot of native interop, which is, of course, costly. When we compare that to the SKIA Sharp rendering, you can see that the tree is much simpler. There is just Uno Canvas where we draw everything, and it's hardware accelerated, so it's very fast. And then we also support things like accessibility. So if you want to, you can enable accessibility using your screen reader, and we will generate semantic root and all those semantic elements so that the screen readers can still understand the page and correctly explain it to the users. So this way you get much better performance than before, but you still have the accessibility support that you need. So that's kind of performance comparison in Uno Platform 6.0. And now let's switch to some additional benefits that SKIA Sharp rendering brings. So here I have my Uno Platform sample application that I built for this demo with my colleague Dominic. This application is running currently on Ubuntu, but it's running inside of WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, on my Windows machine. And I have here an example of one API that definitely benefits from SKIA Sharp rendering, and that is acrylic brush. Because if you know WinUI, you know that a lot of WinUI elements are actually using this blur effect on the background of the element. And this effect was previously available in Uno Platform, but it wasn't exactly the same as in WinUI, because we had to kind of fall back to those native blurring features of the individual platforms. So we couldn't really pixel perfect match everything to look exactly the same. But now with SKIA Sharp rendering, it looks exactly the same and behaves exactly the same on all platforms. And you can really see that you can tint or change the tint opacity and luminosity opacity so that it really matches your branding, and you can even change the color of the tint. So I can set it to something like red, and you can see that completely changes the behavior and the look of it. And this works now the same way on Android. So here is my SKIA Everywhere Android application running this same sample. And I have also iOS application running the same sample. And it looks exactly the same because it's the same rendering capability and the same rendering pipeline. So that's amazing. And that makes your applications much easier to actually make them look to match your brand. So that is just a quick sample of those additional capabilities. And you might be thinking or asking that it might be actually hard to update to this new SKIA rendering, but I will show that it's actually super easy and barely an inconvenience. So if you go here to global JSON, you can just update to the latest UNO SDK from 5.6 or something like that to 6.0 or newer. And then you go to your CS Proj file and you just add this SKIA render feature. And this only, just this flag makes your Android, iOS, and WebAssembly applications suddenly render using SKIA Sharp. There's nothing else you have to do, and you can easily switch back and forth by just removing or adding that feature in. So you can really pick anytime during your development cycle if you want to use SKIA Sharp rendering or the native rendering. So that's really beneficial. All right, let's go back here. And actually, there are some Microsoft people in the chat as well. So there was a discussion where they were asking how hard it will be for them to update their existing components and toolkits to support UNO Platform 6.0. And the great thing is that we didn't do any breaking changes either. So all the existing controls and existing components are still compatible with 6.0. So for example, the data grid from Community Toolkits is just working without any changes. They didn't have to change any part of the code. They didn't have to publish new binaries. It just works. The same thing with Maps UI to render maps controls and so on. So this all works without any changes needed, and it's still compatible with 6.0. And the good thing is that those controls also work with the SKIA Sharp rendering, so it will work on Android. You can render those maps, and everything will work exactly the same. All right, so let's look into some built-in controls as well, because we have a lot of controls built into the platform, which are coming for free as part of the UNO platform framework itself. And one of them is our ability to render 2D content on the screen. So here is SK Canvas element, which is hardware-accelerated 2D graphics rendering control that allows you to kind of draw any SKIA content onto the surface of your application. And if you need some additional dimension, you can go with the GL Canvas element, which renders 3D elements as well using OpenGL. And again, that's cross-platform, so it works on Windows, Linux, macOS, you name it. And I can actually switch here so that I don't spend all the time in Linux, because I have the same application running here on Windows on my Windows machine directly. So you can see the same behavior that I showed before. Except for it's in dark theme, because my system is in dark theme. But there's one important note here, because we, in the beginning, you might have noticed that we brought a new Windows backend. So now, instead of depending on WPF for Windows management and so on, we are directly using Win32. And that has big advantages, because we can now do proper AOT, and as well, we can now bring the package size down, because we no longer have to package WPF binaries with our UNO platform applications. So your applications will be much smaller this way. So again, the same application running on Windows works exactly the same. But there are some additional new controls that were added in 6.0, and they are pretty exciting. So I will show you here. I have Media Player element, which is a video player that allows you to play video content inside of your application. And now it works across all targets. So it means WebAssembly, Android, iOS, macOS, Linux, and Windows. It works everywhere. And I can prove it to you actually here. I can go to the web version of this application, which you can find on unexpectedapis.uno. And you can see that the media player element works there exactly the same way. So that's pretty cool. And there's one thing that I want to note here, because usually when you are drawing something on a canvas, and you want to bring in some native elements, which the media player element is. If you check here, you can see that we're using the video HTML element, which is definitely a native element to render video content. What usually happens is that you cannot really show any managed content on top of that native content. So for example, here I have the video playing, but this controls layer is actually XAML controls showing up on top of that video. And this is pretty magical because that shouldn't be possible, but it is. And we solved that airspace issue across all targets. So we are able to render layered XAML controls on top of native content as well. And it's a pretty complex implementation. Our colleague Rames figured it out, and I can actually cover that in some future live coding video if you're interested. It's pretty interesting to understand how it actually works, but it works, and it allows you to render content on top of native elements, which is pretty cool. So let's switch to the second new control that is in 6.0, and it is WebView. And here in this example, I have a WebView 2 control that is showing actually the same application that I'm actually showing now. So this WebView inside of my application is again the same unexpected APIs application. So kind of inception scenario, I would say. But I can go even further. If I go here to Android and I go here, I can open the same application here, the same sample here. I can load a web view containing this web version of the application. And inside of that application, I can actually open the same web view sample as well. So we have now a native Android application showing a WebAssembly application of UNO platform, showing a UNO platform WebAssembly application showing the same sample, which I can then open. I can do, for example, the acrylic brush here, and it all works all nicely. And it's kind of pretty cool example how you can go, how far you can go with UNO platform applications, that you can nest them even like this. I'm not sure if it's useful, but it's cool. So, all right, so let's go back to the WebAssembly application. And so far I was mentioning only UI APIs, but we have also a very wide non-UI API layer that comes with UNO platform. Those are all those device sensors and all those features that allow you to talk to your device itself. And all those APIs that were available for WebAssembly, Android, iOS, they are still there. You can still use them with all your SKIA-based applications without any changes. So I can actually show you here some examples. I have a launcher, which allows you to launch a new tab in your browser. I have, for example, network information that allows you to check if you're connected or not. There is sharing, which allows you to share some content from your application using the native OS-based sharing dialog. So this allows you to connect to existing installed applications. And you can also have something like gamepad. So I have this Xbox controller here, and I can press buttons and they are showing up in the browser. And you can see those live values showing up in the browser as well. So just an example of how far you can go with those native APIs. And finally, I hope you like those samples because you can now actually talk to the browser and recognize speech within your UNO platform applications. So just a wide range of non-UI APIs that you can use. And even if you don't use UNO platform, you can now use these non-UI APIs in your .NET applications because we separated the non-UI layer from UNO platform. So most of these APIs you can now use in a plain .NET Android application, for example. So here I have a plain .NET app. You can see just .NET 9 Android, no MAUI. It's just a plain .NET Android application with an activity. And I'm talking to accelerometer here and getting some readings and then showing them on the screen. And I can show that application running in the emulator as well. So here, this is the application, very simple. But if I rotate the device, you can see those values are updating live and showing up directly on the screen. And this is a UNO platform WinRT API running in a non-UNO platform application, which is pretty fun. All right, so I think I went through everything I wanted. So I will hand it over back to Jerome to continue.
Yes, thank you, Martin. That's